Well, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in today to Cordell and Friends. My name is Whittney Gaines, and I'm the creator of Cordell and Friends, and I am Cordell's mom. So I am here today for my first feature interview with an amazing person. I could not have ever wanted anybody else to be our first interview today. I met Elton Randolph about maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
5.
Oh, 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I met him at church. He was there with his new fiance. And I just remember feeling like a bit of a stalker in a sense, because I knew he just reminded me so much of Cordell, but I had not spoke to him. His fiance had introduced him to the church, but we had not had a conversation. So I just remember staring, and I'm like, please stop staring. It's gonna be really awkward that you're just staring. But I just knew I really wanted to meet him and I wanted to talk to him. And when we met and we discussed, and he was telling me that he shared the same diagnosis with my son, it just was it was such an amazing feeling for me. So just being able to have such a great church relationship with him and his wife and their son. And he's been so instrumental in my life, my family's life, my son's life. He's probably meant more to us. His family's been more to us than they could ever know. So I'm so excited that he is here today. He was the first African-American that I ever met. Still, he is the only African-American that I've ever met that had the same diagnosis as my son. And it was just really life-changing to me because it finally gave me that sense of connection that I did not have. And I know that if I feel that way, there's so many other families that feel that way as well. And he has such a great story and he's such a great inspiration. So I'm so excited that he's here. So now I will turn it over to him and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself and his family.
How do I follow up after all? Just know that it is absolutely a mutual vibe coming from our family to yours. And, Cordell is my little buddy. I like to see him going about and just growing and growing as he does. But I want to also thank you for inviting me to share a little bit of this new venture. It's an exciting thing. And it's a needful thing, so needful, especially in our community. I would even go a step further to say that is, like you said, you just don't see a lot of African Americans with cerebral palsy. And another thing with the African American community is that sometimes when we see folks that have a difference in ability, we either shy away or we don't know what to say. So it's kind of an awkward thing. So I'm glad to be sharing that with you today. A little bit about myself. At 42 years old, I'm blessed to have a very, very patient and supportive wife.
Yeah.
Very patient with me. And a blur that you might see running across the screen a few times. If you slow it down just enough, you'll recognize that's a 8-year-old son, Vincent Gregory. So I'm a real blessed guy. I remember being very young when I realized that there was I wouldn't have called it a diagnosis then, but I remember being young and chasing my sister across the living room floor. And we were running back and forth. And at that time, my father stopped us. And he said, Vincent, what I want you to do is walk towards me. And so I walked towards him. And then he said, walk back and do it again. And he turned to my mother and said, Annie, see, he's walking on the tips of his toes. He says, we need to get that looked at, checked out. So long story made shorter, they realized that was a diagnosis for cerebral palsy. My Achilles tendon, I was diagnosed with a spastic cerebral palsy. So what happens, there are the muscles and the tendons and even the joints tend to spasm and get a little rigid. And so they were noticing that. And so I found myself diagnosed with that. And I've just grown up kind of, this is This is who I am. This is part of my personality. It's part of my upbringing, all of that. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell, as far as the cerebral palsy is concerned. You know, I was very blessed. I am very blessed to be one of 10 siblings born
Wow.
to, one of 10 children born to my parents. I have 9 siblings. And I'm so grateful that my siblings, for better or worse, didn't treat me any differently. So they had no problem roughing me up when I was growing up. They had no problem putting me in my place with my little smart mouth. I know you can't imagine me having a smart mouth.
Oh, never. Christine's probably in the background shaking her head. Yeah.
Right. But I tell you, it was a great experience because it gave me that needed sense of, and I hate to use the word, but normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
From the time that children are young, we are kind of conditioned normal versus abnormal, and
Mm-hmm.
I hate that. Even if you remember
Mm-hmm.
uh, Sesame Street, where it's like 3 of these things are doing the same thing, and one is doing the, you know, it's
Doing
their
his
own,
own thing. Mm-hmm.
and we are made to feel different. And
Mm-hmm.
someone that has cerebral palsy or any uh, distinguishment in their abilities,
Mm-hmm.
not a disability, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a disability. They're going to accomplish the same things
Mm-hmm.
that your other children, Cordell is going to accomplish the same things your other children will accomplish. He's just going to find a different way to do it.
Yes.
And it's that difference in ability, that distinguishment in his ability, that should be celebrated,
Mm-hmm.
and not just coddled. And not just for Cordell, not just for myself, but any parent out there, right,
Mm-hmm.
who has been given this diagnosis. It's, I don't want you to feel that your child is less than. No, 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 no. They are, they have been placed in a unique position by God Himself,
Mm-hmm.
and they will get the benefit of learning how to go about things a different way and achieve
Mm-hmm.
the same greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be more pain? Yeah, more days where their legs or arms won't want to do what other legs and arms do. Absolutely. But
Mm-hmm.
you know what? At the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of an experience, they will be there and they'll be better for it.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
No, one of the things I wanted to touch on, just that you said that, one of the conversations that we had, I really wanted to know from you, like, how is it like growing up, like with your siblings? And, you know, because with Cordell, like we have other children. So him and his sister are just 6.5 months apart. So how was that fine line between being sensitive of his needs, and wanting to kind of protect him in a bubble, but then also wanting him to explore and learn things? And I remember you were saying, like, my mom, if I did something wrong, I would get in trouble just like my siblings would get in trouble.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he was like, if I wanted something and they wouldn't always reach and get it, like I would have to find ways to climb up and get it. And if I fell, I would try again, or I would learn to do it a different way. And for me, that just that tidbit of advice was huge, because I'm like, that's true. Like we almost sometimes we handicap them because of our own fear, right?
Oh.
Cordell is fearless. Like fear is not a part of his vocabulary. I am very fearful when it comes to him, but the more I started just adapting him to like our normal household, like everybody has rules, nobody gets a pass.
Right.
He gets disciplined, like they gets disciplined, and he gets it, right? Like every, you know, and he's nonverbal. So sometimes I didn't really know what he knew. But then there'll be times where he'll be throwing stuff and I'll be like, Cordell, if I tell you one more time, I'm going to pop your hands. And he'll just kind of smirk at me, and then he'll just put it down and go about his business. Like, oh, she got me. So I love that advice about like, we are responsible for creating their normalcy. So if we make them different, if we treat them different, then they grow up thinking that they're different. if we treat them the same, then they grow up thinking that they are just like everyone else, even if they have to find a different avenue to get there. So one of the things that I know a lot of families, myself included, and I used to bombard you with questions all of the time, just such a lack of knowledge about like what's available, or like even like school life and how to advocate for ourselves and just how to find resources. And how would you say, and you were a child then, but how would you say that you got, like, how was your educational life? Like, did you feel like growing up you were able to access like things that you needed, or do you feel like it really was a struggle? And at school, like educationally, like, do you feel like it really was a struggle?
Excellent questions. If I could go to the one part where you were speaking about my upbringing and how my siblings treated me and how my parents treated me. I remember being really young. I had to have been like 4 or 5, and already had been through a surgery or two. And so I was feeling pretty protected, pretty coddled, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting the gist that, okay, I'm different in a good way. They aren't going to yell at me. They aren't going to, punish me. So we're sitting in a doctor's office, and it was my doctor was an older, short German lady. I remember the thick accent. And I remember her saying, my mother asked, okay, if the other kids get in trouble and Vincent's with them, does he get a spanking as well? Does he get a whipping as well? And she said without a moment's hesitation, absolutely, get him first. And the look on my face was like, no, I thought I'm like, I'm special. You can't do that to me. But you know what? I'm grateful because there are no passes. And it taught me that if I'm big enough to get in enough trouble with my siblings, I'm big enough to handle whatever punishment that is coming our way. And so to that end, and my siblings would not allow me to feel too special. They'd rough me up just on GP, on general purpose.
Yeah.
So
they kept you humble.
it kept me humble. But
Yeah.
you know what? The flip side of that is I knew that if I ran into any trouble, any bullying, even any difficulty walking on an icy patch, any one of my siblings, although they may have roughed me up inside the house, they were right there, So to help me get through whatever that situation was. And so I'm grateful for that. To your point, as far as schooling, I went to Washington Township up here in Indianapolis. And in the 80s, Washington Township, I would normally be maybe one of 2 Black kids in a class. It was not abnormal for that to be the case. The reason I want to point that out is because sometimes what I found out is that I would be ridiculed more or bullied more when I was on the bus or when I was in the neighborhood. When I was around other Black kids. Here's the point I want to make, and I want to stress for especially parents with children of color who have disabilities. It's hard enough being a child of color in this society, right? When you add to that the struggles sometimes of having a difference of ability, you have to make sure that you are constantly not coddling your child, but encouraging, catching them doing things that you might take for granted with your other kids. Kind of mention it to them. You don't have to coddle them. Oh, it's not about, oh, little Cordell, you're just so. It's not that. It's, hey, I saw that, Cordell. Good job. Keep going. Because what I found was, and this is sad, we have to stop pulling our own down. When there are children with differences of ability, and you get more flack from your own, you get bullied more from your own, it's detrimental. It really can be. We can't be crabs in a bucket.
Yeah.
we can't tear each other down. We should always be building each other up, despite whatever level of ability or difference of ability or distinguishment of ability, however you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to encourage one another. As far as learning, one thing I would encourage parents with children that have some sort of, distinguishment is to advocate for your child. My parents were
Mm-hmm.
great at that. They were great, and the school system was great. The one thing that I was not in a special needs course, I was in a resource program because my dexterity was slower.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't take a test at the same, it would take me longer to take a test to write a word down when I was younger. And so they would send me and the test to a resource teacher, and I would take it with a little more time, but still achieve the grades that I either knew the stuff or I didn't. But look for those programs. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let them too quickly assign your child just to a special needs program and,
Mm-hmm.
and label them as such and keep going. Say, how many of the mainstream classes can my child handle?
That's great. Mm-hmm.
And then push for that. And then you say, okay, does he need or does she need help taking a test, or does she or he need a little extra time in between classes to get from one class to another? But
Mm-hmm.
I want them in a mainstream class. I don't care if he's nonverbal. Let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I've got to go sit next to him or her in class.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you got to do. One thing, when I was older, when I got into high school, I was on a lot of pain pills because I was doing walking around North Central High School, and my parents told me, well, why don't you just get in a wheelchair?
Mm-hmm.
North Central's way too big. Just get in a wheelchair. No, I refused to do that. And I told God at that point, I said a prayer and I said, I'd rather be in pain every day of my life,
Mm-hmm.
every single day, than to give over to being in a wheelchair. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell you, Whitney, I'm in pain every day of my life, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking, I'm
And I've
driving.
never seen you in a wheelchair. That's
and so
awesome.
because with CP,
Mm-hmm.
when you stop using it, you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just, I feel like I'm rambling, so I apologize.
No, it's okay.
But that's what I feel like happens when we tell kids that they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Your son, I remember being at your house chilling with Karan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were watching some game. It was Connor's baby shower or something. We
Okay.
were watching a game upstairs, and Karan had walked away, and Cordell walked in the room and started climbing on a bookshelf.
Yes.
That was, and I'm looking, and I'm like, first of all, before I thought, let me help him get down,
Yeah.
I thought, I'm jealous of this dude. Look at him. He was climbing nothing slowed him down.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that he wasn't told that he shouldn't. I'm sure you told him a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times he shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Never convinced him that he couldn't.
That's so true.
And so, because no one convinced him that he couldn't do it, the sky's the limit. A lot of times, just like our muscles, if we don't use them, we lose
Mm-hmm.
them. A person with any differentiation in ability, if we don't activate that sensor, that cognitive center that says, I can pass this test, I can climb these stairs, I can be a doctor, I can be a lawyer, then soon we're going to lose the ability, the mental ability.
That's so true. So I want to jump in. So there was two things that you said that I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. So one of the things, because one of my topics when I seen the list was because, and you touched on it, I read an article one time and they listed it almost, they called it like a dual diagnosis, right? They're like being disabled and Black simultaneously. And I thought it was such an interesting way to categorize it because I never looked at it like that. But the last couple of years, I definitely been more aware, I guess I can say, of just some distinct differences in access to things, and also just how to raise my son, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he has to, my fear, if you look at him from a distance, you would never know that he's a nonverbal child. So
Mm-hmm.
to your point, that also causes me to be more, he has to know certain things, right? He has
Mm-hmm.
to learn certain things. I can't just assume that, he'll get a pass, because they can clearly see that, like, he's not listening because he clearly doesn't understand. He has to learn to understand, because I'm not going to
Absolutely.
always be able to coddle him. I might want to, but I can't. And I know that, and I know that he wants that independence so much. I
Mm-hmm.
know that even if I tried, I would not be able to keep him with me all the time. I
Right.
want to. I have this envision of me, him, and Kron and Emma growing up in like a tiny home together. But I know that that's not him. That's not him,
No.
right? He
No.
wants that independence. So that means, as a parent, we have to be aware of where the world is. And we
Absolutely.
have to be aware to not be naive that people will just give them a pass, right? They have to know certain things. They have to be taught certain things that I don't necessarily have to teach my Caucasian daughters, right? But I have to
Mm-hmm.
teach my son certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when somebody says stop, like, you stop, Cordell. Like, you don't get to just
Absolutely.
not listen. When somebody says something, you have to listen. Like, listen. And we've really been hammering on that, because it's a real thing, whether we want to admit it or not. It's a
Absolutely.
real thing, right? From a distance, you will never know that my son has different abilities. You will never know that my son is nonverbal. So I have to make sure that he is aware of certain things. Like, I feel like that's my job as a parent, to make sure that's
Mm-hmm.
just the way the world is, right? And he just
Absolutely.
needs to know. So I thought that was awesome when you touched on that, because the other piece of that is, just like I mentioned how much meeting you impacted my life. Actually, I just met somebody. I didn't meet him. I met him over the phone this past week, and getting
Uh-huh.
ready for Cordell and Friends. And they live in Tennessee, and they had an adult daughter who had cerebral palsy. And and they were African American, and just having that sense of connection, it's like you can't really describe it, right?
Right.
I remember there was times where Cordell was in the hospital, and everyone's always checking up, especially people from church and
Uh-huh.
family, and people were just texting, and sometimes you don't really want to have to keep telling the story over and over. And I remember you had text, you and Chris, and you just said, hey, let me know what's going on. And instantly, like, I just knew, like, I don't even have to, you understand, like, you get it, right? If
Mm-hmm.
nobody else understands, I don't have to give you the whole play-by-play. I don't have to start from scratch. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm feeling right now. You know what Cordell is feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, it's like you didn't even have to say anything for me to feel like, just exhale, Whitney, just exhale. So I feel like, as a community, though, to your point, sometimes what we don't know, we shy away from, or sometimes we can hurt our own,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel embarrassed for saying, before I had my child, I don't even think I ever knew really anyone that had, like, knew them personally, somebody that
Mm-hmm.
had, like, special needs to that extent. I never knew, but I also never went out of my way to know.
Mm-hmm.
So as a community, I feel like it's a catch-22. I feel like there's so many families that have children that their needs might be not as extensive as Cordell's, but there is something there. But I think because it's kind of a taboo thing in the community, it's quick for us to say, oh, they'll be fine. They'll
Mm-hmm.
be fine. They don't
Mm-hmm.
need medication. And so I feel like knowledge is just power. So I'm really excited about just being able to educate more people. And you have educated me a lot.
Oh.
So that piece, like, I really want us to be able to educate our own community, just minorities in general, on knowing what are our resources. Your child, you're limiting their potential by not educating yourself, because there's
Absolutely.
so many resources available. I never thought Cordell would sleep out of my room. I was always so scared he was going to go near the stairs. So here he is, like 6 years old. He's almost the whole length of my bed. And I remember, like, you telling me about different programs and resources. And then I found
Mm-hmm.
out, like, there's a program, like, they make special beds for him.
Mm-hmm.
His insurance covered it, the whole entire thing. And now he loves it. Like, he sleeps in his own bed in his own room every night. But so it's just a lack of knowledge.
It
And I
is.
think that, we can be our biggest hurdle sometimes when it comes to that. So I'm just so excited to be able to be part of that bridge. Um, to giving that access of knowledge to people, because I know that we need it. I know I needed it. So
and I'm so glad that Cordell and Friends is stepping up in a huge way to do that, because like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And get out there. Now, growing up, we didn't have Google, right? But now we should start putting those questions that are rolling around in your mind as a newly diagnosed parent of a child with a difference of inability, and all those little, even those questions, those judgmental what ifs, and Google it. And then you have to do that research to know what is best for your child. Because just because it said online that this is the way to go, hey, search some people out. Hey, hit up Whitney, give me a call. Send me an email. You know, the sky's the limit. To the point that you were making a little earlier, where we have to be aware of different ways of getting places, be it different ways of getting places, be it physical or intellectual. I went to IU Bloomington for school, and when you go on that campus, it is not made for a person with a difference in ability. Those buildings are 150 years old, and they're all grandfathered in, which means they are not going to change a single stone to make it easier for you to get into the building. How bad do you want it? Do you want the education to go into a building where you have to literally sit on the stairs and scoot up in place? Do what you got to do. A lot of people with differences in ability, when I approach any building, as I'm walking towards the entry, I'm looking at how the stairs are, or I'm looking at where's the railing. If they don't have a railing, how else am I going to get in this building? I've got to get in. I can't stay outside. So just like a person with a difference in ability is thinking that through, as a parent, start thinking that way. Okay, if Cordell needs to get to the same place, or if Cordell needs to achieve the same thing, how can I help him? Not do it for him, but how can I help him make it easier for him? I'm blessed to be the director of public education for Zionsville Fire Department. So I get to go into schools, into nursing homes, and I get to teach people how to prevent fires and what to do in case a fire starts. I say this because in my education, in my educating children and students that come in years ago, two quick stories. I was educating and I was teaching stop, drop, cover, and roll. And so I'm moving around the room, and just like any person with cerebral palsy, you're going to fall from time to time. It happens. I remember when my wife and I first got together, when we first started dating, and I would fall, and she'd be like, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay?" And yeah, I'm okay. Now she's just like, "You good?" You know, she's used to it.
I can attest to that.
So yeah. But I remember teaching, and I fell right in the middle of class, and I've got 55 pair of kids' eyes looking at me, and I fell right at a point where I was talking about getting ready to stop, drop, cover, and roll. And so when I fell, I just started still teaching rolling. And I heard one of the teachers whisper to another teacher, did he mean to fall? Did he hurt himself? And the lady's like, yeah, I think he did. He's really good. He's really good. Well, no, I didn't mean to fall. But just like that little incident, a person with differences in ability will always make adjustments. When the world doesn't adjust for them, they will make adjustments to achieve what they need to achieve in the world. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm again, sorry, I'm rambling.
So I want to touch on one last thing before we go. So obviously, my organization itself is not a Christian-based organization. However, I would be remiss to touch on my faith, and fortunately, we have the same faith. So because and I think it's so important for a lot of families. When Cordell was born, obviously he was very, very sick. And, you know, the medical aspect was that he's probably not going to make it, right? And a lot of people have those same diagnoses, right? When we were told that he would not make it, and, you know, as time went on, even though we were told he might make it, but then he might be a vegetable, and then years go on, you know, he has cerebral palsy, so he probably won't walk. You know, the list kind of goes on through the years. And, you know, I understand that the doctors are they're doing their job, right? They base their answers on science. And science, you know, statistics show A, B, C, and D. But one of the things that I found, so when people ask me, how did you kind of make it through? Like, how did you know when to not take him off life support? How did you know? And I'm like, I didn't always know. I just knew that there is a higher power, right? So whenever the doctor says he's not going to make it, maybe they're right, but I know somebody that knows a little bit more than them. So I just leave it in his hands, right? And I used to pray. People always ask what I prayed for. And I'm like, I didn't pray for like crazy miracles. I didn't pray for any of that. I just prayed that God knows best. Like, he knows better than I know. And his plan is what's going to happen. Like, you can't go wrong if you follow his plan. So literally that's what got me through hard times, and still does. You know, we've had some scares with Cordell, and that's always kind of what gets me through hard times, is just that faith piece of, I understand what it looks like on paper, right? I understand. I see, you know, he does not do well with anesthesia, and he's had a lot of surgeries. And on one occasion, he went cardiac arrest after anesthesia, and, you know, they're pumping and pumping. And I just remember standing there, and I'm praying that God has his way. Like, I truly believe in the faith of God. And I know for me, having a child with some significant needs, that has been life-changing for me. I probably would have lost it a long time ago, because the doctors can definitely be Debbie Downers. I get it. That's their job. They give you worst case scenarios, and they definitely don't hesitate. But for me, I think what has allowed me as a parent to keep going and be strong, and then if I'm good, I can encourage my children, is that sense of faith. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you feel like faith for you and for your parents has impacted your life growing up and how you operate now.
Most definitely. I am a pew baby, you know, born and raised in the church, and dad is a retired pastor. And, you know, their faith, first, allow me to speak to that. There's nothing more impactful than praying parents, and praying parents that believe, and praying parents that try their best to live a godly life. I'm not going to judge anybody, because, you know, I'm trying to make it myself. But
not perfect.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
I will say that we had good examples of letting your faith determine your trajectory in our parents. Did I always follow my faith in the best way? Not a chance. Not a chance. Made a lot of mistakes, and thankful for forgiveness even to this second. I will say that in the times where the pain gets the worst, where the bullying got the worst, where even the self esteem was in the toilet, there was God. Whether I readily acknowledged him being there or not, he was there. And I thank God now that it says, you know, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. And I can do all things. I mean, there's nothing that, and that's the essence. I kind of think of what we were talking about today, is there's nothing that your child won't be able to do. I remember talking to you that first time, Whittney, and you were saying, well, they said he'll never walk. And I said, don't believe him. Don't believe him. As you said, doctors are trained to tell you the worst case scenario each and every time. God has the last say. And if you leave that open, don't put a period where God has put a comma. Don't don't say, well, he'll never talk. Right now, he's nonverbal. That's not always going to be the case. It doesn't have to be. So what I would encourage is my faith has helped me through a lot. When the tears flow, when the pain is high, it's helped me, because if it wasn't there, I don't know that I would be here, if that makes sense.
I agree.
I would encourage anyone out there. Anger is part of this. Let's be real. You look at it and you look at what your child is going through, or you yourself are going through, and you're like, why, God? Why? This doesn't make any sense. What did I ever do to you? Most people aren't ready for this one, but it's okay to be angry. And it's okay to be angry with God. And here's why. Whitney, let me ask you this. When you're driving and someone cuts you off, right? And you go off, you yell at them, right?
You know, I'm a work in progress. That's true.
Work in progress, right? But when you get home around your husband and your children, do you think really about that person who cut you off? Not really. No. Why? Because they don't matter to you. Yeah. It's when someone who has a close relationship with you that you feel they've done something that you don't agree with. That closeness is what brings the hurt. That closeness is what brings the anger and brings the ire. And so I tell people when they don't want to admit that they're angry with God because they think that, oh my goodness, I can't be angry with God. No, it just means that you have a relationship with him. So in your anger, tell him how you feel, but let him also work to heal you. You know, you're not damaged goods, even if you have a difference of ability. He put something in you that no one else can handle, no one else can carry. And he said, my vessel right here can do this. He considered you just like he considered Job. So know that it's a faith walk and that he has entrusted you with this difference, if I even use that word. I'll say this and then I'll shut up because I feel like I'm rambling. But,
no, great.
But any parent that has a child with a difference in ability, you've been handed a masterpiece from God. You really have. You may not recognize it because of all the other outward trappings that get us caught up, the inability to do this, or the whatever it might be. Don't get caught up in those trappings. We always tell kids, little kids, we give them a piece of paper and they start coloring, right? And they color all over the place. They don't care what the outline was, Whitney. They don't. They just color. And it's not until they get older where we tell them to color within the lines, right? And so then they all become this copy where everyone wants to be neatly within the lines. That's not how God has purposed us. Some of the most beautiful masterpieces are what we call abstract art, the Picassos, the things that you're looking at it going, what the heck is that? I don't know, but I love it. That's you, that's me. And I think sometimes we've gotten so used to coloring within those lines that we don't realize that God has given us some abstract masterpieces in our children and in ourselves. And if we would just give our faith over to him and let him lead the way, like he did with you. Don't put a period where he's put a comma, because he's got more. He's not done. And I just want to encourage anybody and everybody out there, find your resources. Hook up with Cordell and Friends. Send messages my way, Whitney, if need be. I'm a ready resource. And we're growing this as we go along. So I don't know it all, but what I do know is I'm more than willing to share with someone else.
Well, I thank you so much. I'm so excited. And I know I've told you and I've told a lot of people this. I mean, Cordell saved my life. And when I say like God's plan is not always our plan, You know, when they say, if you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. I never imagined this part being my life, right? I definitely had a trajectory that my life was going on. And when I had Cordell, he changed my life, like completely changed my entire life, you know? So from that, you know, we became foster parents. We adopted more special needs kids. And if my husband didn't cut me off, we'd probably have several more. So, you know, when I say it changed my life, it completely changed my life. And I always say everyone who has met Cordell loves Cordell. Like, you can never not love him. And I say that a lot about you, like your energy. I've never met anyone who is not just so engaged with your energy, like your happiness, your enthusiasm. And I say that about my son. He's the happiest child. You know, I worry about all of the intricacies and the details and things like that, but he is by far the happiest child I've ever met in my life. So when days are hard, and even there's times when he's in the hospital and I'm like a wreck, you know, sometimes I'll look over him and he'll just smile and lay his head on me. And then it's like, it's okay, you know? And then I know why this is what God wanted. Like, if Cordell was not how he was, like, it's not God's plan. Like, God knows exactly what his plan was. And he knew that Cordell is going to change the world. Right. And
absolutely.
And I believe that. And I believe that, you know, I'm so thankful to be his mom, you know, like I'm thankful for him. Right. Like, you changed my life. You brought me close to God. You showed me what faith in God can do. Yes. And, you know, so I'm so excited to be able to inspire others, right? And not look at your child that has these different needs as a burden or as a stressor. And it's like, use it as a life-changing event, right? Because it definitely has changed my life. And I'm so grateful. I'm grateful that you agreed to do this with me today. And I'm so excited to show everybody what we have in store, because I truly believe that this organization is life-changing. It's called Cordell and Friends. And the concept is that we really focus on the needs of just some really special people, and not people with special needs, because Cordell is so special. He's so much stronger than, you know, he's so much stronger and he's so much happier than I could have ever imagined. So I'm so excited to kind of bring that into the mainstream, and other families who are struggling just need some support, some guidance, some prayer, resources. I'm so blessed that we're able to do that. So I just want to thank you so much. I have not seen little VG running around, so he has done awesome. I knew I was just going to see him trickling in the background.
He was standing right here at one point.
Well, he did great. Yeah, he did great. I just knew he was gonna, and then I was gonna see Christine running to get over. But that's life, right? You have a beautiful family. You are definitely an inspiration for me, my family. I'm sure many other families out there who question on what the future looks like, right? For my child, it's like the future is endless. And I think that you're a prime example of that. So I just want to thank you so much for doing this. And we will see you next time on Cordell and Friends.
All right.
Thank you.